Yay! All right, as mentioned, I'm David Wells, work at Serverless. If you haven't heard of it and you're building static sites and you need some sort of function to run to do something that you can't do on the client, check it out. The title of my talk was Advanced Markdown, but then I was like, that's kind of boring. So I was like, what's up with Markdown? And I was like, nah, that's kind of cheesy. And I was like, markup with Markdown? And I was like, no, that's still not right. And then I kind of settled on this one. Feel the rhythm, feel the rhyme, get on up. It's Markdown time. So let's do it. That's all my slides. Because this is about Markdown, so this talk is written in Markdown. And the slides can be found here if you want to check them out. We got a table of contents. Ooh, that's fancy. But yeah, all right, cool. So this is basically kind of what we're going to talk about. Why Markdown? Everyone here probably already knows that. I'm going to go real fast because I have a lot of different resources and kind of tools that I want to show you guys. And kind of how we use Markdown at Serverless to build out our entire site, all of our docs, pretty much everything, even internal company repos. I'm not going to show that, but we do it. All right, cool. So why Markdown? I'm going to zoom in. I've never done slides in a Markdown file before, so you might see ahead. So anyways. All right, so why Markdown? One, because it's open. Like, we put it on GitHub. Anybody can fix typos, update any of the content. As mentioned in the previous talk, you have a running history of every change that's happening. It just makes sense. And if you ever had to like revert something in WordPress and like go grab a SQL like snapshot from a day ago and try to figure out like run that locally, and it's a huge disaster. So everything under version control makes 100% sense. And then the other reason why we use Markdown for everything is, like mentioned in the previous talk, no CMS kind of lock-in. Markdown is extremely portable. We can use it with any static site generator, and it's kind of the language of choice for documentation and pretty much everything on GitHub. And it's just simple. There's really no accounts to manage except maybe a GitHub account, and no CMS that we need to deal with, no plugins to install or upgrade, make sure everything's secure. We run a static site, so everything is, by default, basically secure. There's some Markdown basics. Everyone here probably knows all that stuff. If you just Google how to do Markdown, there's 2 links here, the GitHub Docs and then Daring Fireball. That's like the one that always shows up about how to do basic Markdown stuff. I wanted to jump into some more advanced formatting tips, things that we like to do to make our READMEs and docs on GitHub just more pleasant, visually pleasant. So real quick, so left image alignment. How many times have you put an image on GitHub, it's just centered or huge or it just looks like crap? This little snippet here, float something to the left or float something to the right or center an image. And if you're not familiar with Phil Murray, use it for everything, for every project. Your clients will love you forever. So those are like really basic things, but you can basically, if you are using animated GIFs for demos and stuff like that, it can go a long way. And if you're familiar with the Serverless project and you've ever seen any of our READMEs, like our CEO is like freaking crazy about GIFs. He used to make videos in Hollywood, and he just makes GIFs for everything. It's a little overboard in my opinion, but GIFs can, a picture speaks 1,000 words. A GIF speaks, I don't know, however many frames, times that math, etc. Cool. So use some of those. We also our blog is hosted on GitHub as well. This actually I just stole directly from our blog guide, where we keep all of our content, because some people aren't really familiar with Markdown. But yeah, so there's some more formatting tips over there. How do we get this guy? How do we get this expand and collapse? That's pretty cool. All too often you see a project and it's just full of just a ton of stuff. It's a humongous wall of text that is you just don't want to consume because too long didn't read, basically. So how do we get this guy in GitHub? With a very simple collapse. So just put everything in a details block, give it a summary of what you actually want to show to expand, and you can put stuff in a hidden block. Super, super simple. This is like, I can tell by everyone's face, this is boring. But yeah, so just use this. It'll go a long way with, basically not overloading people with stuff. And then some other quick things. So on all of our READMEs, we always put like our links and stuff at the top of our READMEs. This is kind of a marketing thing. But if you do want traffic back into your site or your project, which you probably do, toss those up at the top and do that. Very important. Badges. Oh my God. Badges, man. I'm going to change the name of this talk to badges. Facepalm. All right, so badges. I don't really like badges. You can use badges. I know they do serve a purpose to show that your project's updated. There are some really cool use cases of badges too, but I'm just not a fan. You can use badges though. I just want to throw that in here as a, joke, if you will. So those are kind of some of, basically if you were reading any of those like about Markdown guides, they don't tell you about any of these. These are just things that I found in the wild of formatting tips that just make Markdown files just more appealing in GitHub specifically. And then some useful Markdown packages. So as mentioned in the previous talk, and if you do have a site running with Markdown, you typically have your metadata in YAML front matter. So this package, gray matter, it's apparently faster than all the other front matter parsers. This is extremely, extremely useful for like writing custom scripts with. So we actually use this in our build process, which I'll show in a little bit. But basically, you can update or change any of the front matter very easily. It turns it into a JavaScript object that you can just manipulate something with. So I actually I used this package as well to port my old WordPress site into just Markdown files using the WordPress JSON API, pulled it down, grabbed the post meta, turned it into front matter. So it's like ready for my new static site, which I haven't got around to launching yet. One day. Remark. So most, I don't know if I'd say most, but a lot of static site generators these days use a project called Remark. It's a pluggable tool that you can basically like extend different pieces of Markdown. A lot of projects use it to render Markdown into HTML or into React. Is Gatsby using Remark? Yeah, so Gatsby uses Remark. We use Phenomic. I want to talk to you after about some of the differences, but so Remark, interesting tool. Am I going too fast? Is everyone following? I got a lot more. Okay, cool. So another tool, and this is a shameless plug, but I made a project called Markdown Magic. Let's take a look. So basically, one of the biggest problems with Markdown or documentation in general is like it gets old fast. It gets out of date, code changes, gets out of sync. You got to go remember to manually update these docs. It's a huge, huge pain in the ass, in the butt. Okay, this is PG, I forgot. Okay, so Markdown Magic, what it is a project that will basically keep your Markdown files up to date via from source code or from external sources or from wherever you want. It's basically a way to sync stuff back. And as I mentioned before, GIFs. Use GIFs. Basically, the way that it works, it's just an NPM package. It's pluggable. I'll talk about that in a second. You can run it from a custom script, or you can run it via the CLI for your project, which I'll show in a second. And basically what it does is it will take a Markdown file. Let's go to the presentation here and zoom in. So what I could do, and I'll open the project in a second as well to show a different example. But what it looks for, Markdown Magic basically looks for a code block like this. So very similar to what was mentioned in the last talk, like a short code. You can basically wrap text in, basically this is what it looks like. You can change this word to whatever you want. I just put auto-generated content, so when people are looking at the Markdown, they know don't mess with the stuff inside. You can even put like the red like stop sign emoji in front of it and what have you. But basically there's a start and a stop block, and then you give it a command. Out of the box, there's a couple of built-in transforms. So there's a remote transform that will go grab a remote file and insert it into that block. Or you can give it the code command and give it the path to whatever file, and it'll pull in that source code and stick it right in there and do all the syntax highlighting stuff for you. And then there's also, this one is a table of contents. So the table of contents that we're viewing in this presentation here, this was automatically generated. How many times have you made a table of contents in a Markdown file and you're like, it's out of date. I got to go update that thing. That's a machine's job, not a human's job. So basically, if I get rid of this guy, say whatever. Let me see. Am I in here? Yeah. Cool. So inside of this package here, I'm just using it from the command line. Or maybe it's... Yeah, I'm using it from the command line. npm, so I'm just doing npm run docs. It will pipe through, and this looks for a glob pattern too, so you can run it through an entire directory of Markdown files. You don't have to give it each individual file for you. It's using globby under the hood. Highly recommend that if you're doing any file system stuff. But basically, if we go back and look at here we go. I guess I should have shown you that and like went right back. But I swear, it just did that, okay? And if I were to change any of these headers in this file, it would basically update the text. And then with these transforms that are built in, there are some options. So like I could have a table of contents that's not collapsed. In my options here, I'm passing it collapse equals true. And then like the text on the like expandable thing says click here to expand. So you can basically build things with options to make them more flexible. But yeah. So as I mentioned, this is like completely pluggable. There's a couple of community members, like 3 people, but we're growing big, man. We're going, yeah. So there's a couple of examples out there in the wild of like basically this is a plugin that will automatically insert a directory tree of your project. Like how many times have you manually done that? I've done it once and I was like, I can't do it. It's stupid. So that, yeah. So GitHub contributors. So this was a cool idea I got from Kent C. Dodds. He has an all contributors CLI project, yeah. Where basically you can put in who's a contributor to your project. It'll generate a grid of your contributors and like kind of give them props right in your README. Super cool. So someone made one for that, a word count in your README. This wouldn't necessarily make sense if you're just showing this on GitHub, but if you were using this Markdown on your site, you could put that into your build process, put a word count right into your Markdown. Cool. So yeah, how do those work? How do the custom transforms work? Let's actually go look at a quick demo. So here I have a demo.md file. I'm using just the custom script to demonstrate how this works. Markdown Magic, if you're using it like as a script, like including it as a package, you just give it a path. Again, this could be a glob path, You give it a config. The config can have custom transforms. So this is actually how the plugin system works, where when it matches whatever your custom transform name is, it will take that content, do whatever you want to it, and then spit it back out and update that block. So in this example, it's basically going to like change this dummy text. So let me just run npm run demo. And then if I go back in here, yeah, so here is the replace text, and you can see like I passed it an option. So it says dude. I believe that's how it's working. Yeah, so option 1 is dude. So that's basically how the plugins work. So you could imagine, and this example we're actually using, I use this on the Markdown Magic docs, all of the documentation for the Markdown Magic project, because why not dog food your own tool, is generated from the source code. So all the transform documentation is like directly where that code lives. So if I ever change it, I know like make sure you change that comment block to keep the docs up to date instead of finding where that doc is and blah, blah, blah. So what this does, it uses a package called Docs, which is super handy from TJ Holowaychuk. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Where basically it will parse your any given code file for JS docs and spit that back out. And then I'm just, for my really simple use case, I'm just putting it out as a string, but you can use literally any rendering engine you want to render that back. Handlebars, you could render this back in your Markdown with React if you wanted. Go nuts, it's completely extendable. But yeah, and then here are just 2 plugin examples. So in my transform block, I'm just including a local one, and then if I actually wanted to use one from npm, I could just like import the count one, and then if anywhere in my Markdown I had the transform count, it would count the words in my document and spit it back out in that block. So that's Markdown Magic in a nutshell. It's because like we have like a million different GitHub repositories, and keeping everything up to date is rather tedious. So I needed a programmatic way to do that. So this actually helps us with like our build process, basically. Yeah. So that is the demo. Let me show you guys. Let me go back to my slides. Yeah. Okay, cool. And then let me show you one more example before we move on. So with serverless, we have a ton of examples of like things that you can build with serverless. So like API endpoints, custom cron jobs, blah, blah, blah. You don't, yeah. I'm not going into the spiel, but check out this repo if you're interested in what like you can do with serverless. But in our README, we have so many examples, and we also have so many examples from the community of people building projects with serverless. Serverless has more than 3 contributors, so. But so basically, these docs are generated from just a JSON file in this repository. So community examples, because we want this data not only like in our README, but we also want to consume this, let's say, on our site to show community examples or pipe this in Algolia or whatever. So we wanted it in kind of like a consumable data format, aka JSON. And then basically we just have a generate readme.js file that pulls it in. There's a couple of just helper functions, and it just generates a table, and it's just spitting out like the actual Markdown for the table. And if you ever had to like make a table in Markdown, freaking nightmare. So yeah. So basically maintaining this table, like while not impossible, very unpleasant. So yeah, so basically, and this is actually another styling tip. You can put break tags in a table to make it multi-line. So instead of it just like flowing over, there's a break tag here to make it look nice and pretty. And then the other thing I'm doing here is I'm actually grabbing let's see, oh, that's not the, I'm grabbing what the actual extension of the code is and giving it the actual syntax. So that's, yeah. Same with here, and we use this on our main README. We use this on a lot of different READMEs to generate stuff. So that's Markdown Magic in a nutshell. Hopefully you can use it and enjoy it and contribute back to the community. All right, cool. Yeah, so, okay, so that was some of the kind of useful packages I wanted to mention. There's a couple of different useful utilities as well. Because I work with Markdown way too much and feel its limitations, frequently, and that's why great CMSs are being built. But one of the problems with our blog, for example, so we have someone managing our content. They wanted a way to schedule blog posts, which is like just out of the box with WordPress. But then you're in WordPress. So I had to solve this solution, or solve that problem, rather. So this is actually, no one's seen this but you guys. This is like a sneak preview. We're releasing this next week. But basically, this is a post scheduler for static site generators. So Jekyll, Hugo, Gatsby, Phenomic, etc., whatever. What it is a really bare bones serverless project. And what it does is it basically, let me actually show you guys some of my test commits. So inside of here, this is our blog. So it, like, typically when a new blog is submitted to our site, it's in a new branch from an author. It could be internal or external. Then we review that post, and then what used to happen is someone had to be there at the time to publish it, to basically trigger the Netlify build. And this is not in our main site. I'll get to that in a second. But basically, we needed a way to schedule it. So the way to schedule it is just by, if you're a collaborator on the project, it basically checks if you're a collaborator and you have like basically merge rights. Then it will, a cron job is running every hour or however often you want to publish. You could set it to every day if you wanted, if you don't want to run the Lambda too much. This falls well under the free tier of AWS's like Lambda though. And it just runs a cron job every hour to check if a scheduled post is ready to go. And if it is, it will then publish that. But once you schedule it, it basically calls back, alrighty, the post is scheduled, and then once it actually publishes it, it publishes, merges it, and then it automatically merges it into your master. We have it set up here, so that triggers a Netlify build, and we'll rebuild and publish the blog post for us. So just real quick, I'll show you what that looks like. Again, this is like, you can use this with any project, totally for free. But we have two, it listens to GitHub webhooks. So you just plug in your GitHub webhook URL, and then, let me actually show you that. It's inside of lib, there's a couple different files here. So webhook listener, so this is like a Lambda function that basically like is listening for events. When a new pull request is submitted, it hits this Lambda goes, verifies first that it's from your repo, just so nobody messes with you. That's highly unlikely that would happen, but safety first. It then validates the user. Then it grabs the actual pull request data to save it, the SHA, because that's what it needs to merge. We'll save the Unix time. Then it'll basically save it into DynamoDB and then post the comment back to GitHub. So that's the first step. This will just run for you if you just plug in your configuration options. You just got to give it your GitHub repository and your GitHub webhook secret. Generate an API token so you can get that data and have rights to merge something back in, and your GitHub username also for requests. So that's the first part, and then the second part is just the the scheduled post, which is super simple. It just does a DynamoDB scan. Give me all the items. If any items like basically match, if the post time is less than now, aka it's time to schedule this, then we go ahead and merge that post, delete it from the database, and then post the comment that, hey, we did it. So this is running like totally inertly in our AWS account, I guess 24 times a day. You get 1 million free invocations a month with Lambda though, so that's pretty handy. And yeah, so that's like an example of a really simple serverless service that you can use to like extend your site. And then the way this is actually configured is with the serverless.yaml file. I'm not going to go into it, but really all you need to do is configure your secrets and do a serverless deploy for your repository. So hopefully you guys find this useful. Did you guys CMS schedule stuff? All right. Yeah. Is there a way to cancel a post? Not right now, but that'd be pretty easy, right? So the same way that I'm just listening for a specific pattern. Let's see, inside of the web. What's that? Yeah. So that could do it, or so I'm just matching this pattern, which is to the schedule pattern with the blocks. I could say like cancel or whatever, or yeah, same way, and then just run the delete from the database or whatever. But yeah, cool. So that's the schedule post tool that you guys can't use yet, but next week, ping me about it. Yeah, so that's one of them. Okay, so this other one I actually found from the Gatsby project, and I was like, what? That's amazing. And it was the zero friction inline editing, where basically this was, it's a project called WikiHub, where basically you don't need admin rights to submit a pull request to update content. So like basically I could come in here, suggest changes, and say like, LOL, describe my change, hi, submit that through, and then through its magic, it basically just submitted an anonymous pull request for me. So I don't even need a GitHub account to submit content. I can like, oh, there's a typo there. I'm just going to update that real quick. Inline, super crazy awesome, and something that I'm looking into adding to our site as we speak. Probably. Cool. So yeah, and then just some of my favorite editors. I use Byword. So I wrote this post in Byword. It's just like a crazy minimalistic Markdown editor that gets out of your way. I like the iOS app even better because like the keyboard, it just gives you like the pound signs just right there, so you don't have to like, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I use a lot of noises in my presentations. And then Typora is, some of our team members use that. I haven't really gotten too much into that. And then this is really cool. How many times have you seen like a really sweet chart or drawing that someone did in like ASCII, and you're like, oh my God, this person has way too much time on their hands. The way that they're doing it, there's probably a lot of tools out there like that. There was an online editor that I found, but it was not as good as Monodraw. So Monodraw is super crazy awesome. It's basically Photoshop for like ASCII text. So if you're trying to explain a complex flow in a GitHub like issue, or if you wanted to put that into your README, you could do it really easily, like basically with this tool, like crazy awesome. So this is actually our like auth flow for our static site that I'm working on. But yeah, so if you're looking to make really, this costs like $20, I think, but totally worth it. Very, very handy. And then my favorite way to make GIFs is with Cap. So Cap is also free. I think it's an Electron app. I'm not sure about that, but basically, if you wanted to capture a portion of your screen, make an animated GIF super quick, toss it into a README, yeah, you could do it that way. A quick aside, some people on my team didn't know that you could do this, but if you just want an image real quick, you don't have to actually create an issue in GitHub to upload it to the CDN. You can just, let me see, that's a secret. Okay, so if you just create a new issue, so I use Snagit to make screenshots really quickly. Highly recommend it. But I can just like literally copy and paste that, and now I can just drop this into my Markdown file, and then I don't need to create this issue. Like GitHub's CDN, thank you for the free files. But yeah, so as a quick aside, that's how you can also put images in Markdown really quickly. Cool. And then if you're not using this, I use Atom sometimes as well to edit Markdown. That's pretty good syntax highlighting, so I can just kind of scan real quickly. There are some packages as well to do GitHub style previews, so you don't have to like go and test it in GitHub. And all these are live links in this presentation, by the way, so you can check those out. And then just to show you guys how long I've been doing Markdown, I made this tool. My site is actually still on WordPress. I know. All right, I'll leave. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. I let everyone down. I'll port it over soon. Anyway, so if you are still stuck, or a client, or for whatever reason they have to use WordPress, I wrote this plugin a while back that supports GitHub flavored Markdown and syntax highlighting for like code kind of driven posts. So check that out if you do need to deal with that, but hopefully not. Cool. All right, so those are a lot of the tools. How much time do we have? 3 minutes. Oh boy. Okay, so how we use Markdown. So we have 3 separate repositories. So our site, like I mentioned, we're using Phenomic to run our site. If you're not familiar with React-driven site generators, super awesome. The reason why I'd recommend it, the build time isn't as fast as something like Hugo, but if you are using a React-driven site generator like Gatsby or Phenomic, you get this like single page application look and feel that's like crazy fast to navigate around. And then this is also offline. So like immediately, when you visit the site, service worker boots up, downloads everything. If you lose connection or if you're on a plane or whatever, everyone can see everything on your site still, which is a UX win, in my opinion. Anyways, yeah, so we use Phenomic to do the build. All of our blog content is inside of the blog repo. This was to be one, so it's easier to find stuff in our blog, because otherwise it'd be kind of nested inside of a couple subfolders. So it'd be harder to find for contributors. And 2, because we didn't want to tie it directly to the site build. This is like completely agnostic Markdown that can run anywhere. And we actually use the convention of kind of how Jekyll does it. This is also a tip. If you don't do this and you're not using this date convention, looking at this in a Finder window or whatever it's insane. And you can't find anything you're looking for, which is, maybe you can if you're like a Finder ninja, but is that a job title? Okay. The other reason is, we also wanted our docs of serverless to live directly in the repository, because if you're looking at a project, you want to see the docs directly like where you would expect them. So that's inside of our GitHub repository. When the site builds, Phenomic kicks off the pre-build script. It pulls in, it downloads this repository, and it downloads the blog repository, takes all those Markdown files, puts them into our content folder, runs the Phenomic build process, and then our site is built. Sounds crazy, and I mean, it's more steps than it needs to be because we've split it out into 3 repos. You don't have to do that, but there are some benefits to that. Again, your docs living close to the source code and other things. The way some other quick tips here is so in our docs we link back to the main docs site on every single Markdown. This is also like a script that I wrote that basically says, okay, you can read it here and on GitHub if you want, but read it on our site. You'll navigate faster. There's built-in Algolia search, like better experience over there. Also, we can get you to become a user, etc. But yeah, the other thing that I've strongly been considering is how many times have you been to a GitHub repository and been like traversing around their docs and you click on a link and you get the Jedi? Who knows the Jedi? He knows the Jedi. The 404. You get a 404 on almost every single README historically through every single repository. The problem with that is because like someone forgot to update a relative link somewhere and it's pointing to something, or it just doesn't exist anymore. So you have no power over that anymore. Whereas if you link every single, because these like are parodied on our site, if we linked to those, we have, thanks to the power of Netlify and their redirects, we have the ability to redirect that 404 to the new docs, basically. You can't do that with GitHub, and you're just getting, I wish they gave you the stats on how many 404s you get. It's insane, because so many blog posts about things link directly to Markdown files that are 404s. And it's a crying shame. Anyways, it's a lot. Yeah. So just to sum up, one more quick tip. I would recommend doing this, and this is so in our docs as well as our blog, there's this edit link. So like people can jump directly into this edit view and directly like edit the file. So there's like no friction there as well, and a frictionless. It could be even more frictionless because if they're not logged into GitHub. But yeah, and this is, I guess, another tip where if you are using YAML and you don't want it cluttering up your GitHub READMEs, you can just comment it out. And then like on our build step, basically I replace these comments with the YAML blocks, and then it works in our static site build. So that was a lot of stuff. Does anybody have any questions or want to hear more? Okay, so this was actually a huge inspiration for Markdown Magic. This is a project called Verb. This guy, man, it's like some of those open source contributors. John Schlinkert, he's made like, probably like 5,000 NPM packages. Insane. This was an inspiration for Markdown Magic. The way that this one works though is that you have to create a template file of your README, and then it generates it from that template file. I didn't want to have to like maintain a template. I just wanted to do everything in that Markdown file. And then the other one was, so this is, I must have an honorable mention for ASCII Docs. There are some people that really do like ASCII Docs because it has a lot of these plugins, pluggable features kind of out of the box. The problem, in my opinion, with ASCII Docs is nobody knows what it is and nobody writes it. So you're really going an uphill battle when you choose ASCII Docs and you're like, okay, everybody write ASCII Docs and our community write ASCII Docs and learn ASCII Docs, basically. So it is pretty powerful, though. I got a tweet from one of the maintainers after I released Markdown Magic. He's like, why not ASCII Doc Magic? Yeah. Yeah. But now you can tell them about Markdown Magic. But yeah, so that is our crazy setup in a nutshell. I don't think it's too crazy, though.